So Trump is really hunting down China. A 90-day pause on Trump's reciprocal tariffs, with the exception of China, with Beijing now facing 125% tariffs. We are joined by Professor Oh Joon-seok this morning. Welcome back, Professor Oh.
Morning.
So tariffs continue to roll in for Beijing, but a tariff delay has been given to others, including us, South Korea. Now, is that to provoke and further isolate China?
With a high probability, I would say yes. Beijing will reiterate to take a resolute and forceful measure to protect its own interest. And as you mentioned earlier this morning, Beijing might be prepared for the fight song of retaliation in the financial market, triggering another isolationism of China. The Trump administration intensified its trade offensive against China by raising reciprocal tariff rate to 84%. Combined with 20% surcharge, total tariff rate on China imports has now climbed to 104%. And again this morning, 125% applied immediately without negotiation. It's a worldwide declaration of no way out. How far could it be expanded? Simply speaking, in the market between buyers and sellers, who has the upper hand? Definitely the buyer. So at the first phase of the game, fragmentation between the two, as the great buyer in the global trade market, U.S. can choose the game first, either trade war or trade facilitation. The U.S. chose dichotomy of the economy. As a result, the U.S. and China separately both turn their policy focus more on each domestic markets. Now, then the second phase of the game, burden of isolationism. Will the tariff be prolonged? I don't think so. I suppose the U.S. government knows well about this, because customers of the U.S. are the great buyers. The domestic consumers of the U.S. have to pay heavier burden of unrealistic price hike, not to mention of short supply of daily necessities, which could spike political pressure as time goes. This will give the rest of the world a chance to adjust the tariff rate depending on the price elasticity and supply affordability in the market. A 90-day pause on the rest of the country would be helpful at this phase. Now the last. When the second phase of the game is over, then counterattack by China will be wait for the attack. For the great buyer of the U.S. Treasury bond in the financial market, rollout of the U.S. reciprocal tariff might help and unite policymakers of China, the EU, and Japan. China will use market power in the financial market, which amplifies financial vulnerability in the foreign exchange market. And so what I'm worried about now, more than anything else, is that tariff turmoil might trigger the financial turmoil around the world.
Definitely. Well, some experts also point out that this whole drama between the U.S. and China is now not about who wins or loses, but rather it's about who will blink first here, Washington or Beijing. Professor Oh, what's your take on this?
It is hard not to see it as a battle of views. Both hardliners have pursued world-changing goals so far and have a lot to lose if they are seen as weak. In this sense, it's like a tit-for-tat game situation. If I interpret this situation in the frame of a game theory, I know the final answer. So-called dominant strategies, cooperation rather than defection between the two players. Both players benefit if they cooperate, but one benefit and the other lose out if only they defect, and both lose out to a lesser extent if they simultaneously defect. So the cooperation is the best solution. China doubled down on its threat to retaliate against U.S. reciprocal tariff. China appeared unfazed so far. In response to 125% tariff, China retaliated with tariff on U.S. $185 billion of goods, targeting agricultural products like soybeans, poultry, and pork, which is a very, very politically sensitive sector in the United States, as well as industrial products such as cars and chemicals, It also restricted export of rare earth minerals critical to industries like defense and clean energy. When it is prolonged, the people and the economy suffered in both nations. U.S. consumers faced a higher price and farmers need U.S. $28 billion in bailout. China mitigate the hit through domestic stimulus and trade redirection. Global supply chain might face disruption again. As China exports far more to the United States than import, Beijing cannot match Trump's tariff dollar for dollar for the time being. It is expected, at least for the short term, less than 6 months, Chinese business and employment would inevitably take a harder hit. Next time, however, perfect system will sure to reach American customers and businesses.
Well, good thing is for us, South Korea, we've bought some time until early July when we'll have a new leader then. How should we spend the next 90 days then, Professor Oh?
It's seemingly say good news, but it could never be advantageous when Trump administration created a new tariff barrier, which is not existed before, and they will give mercy of discussing tariff on its allies to reduce somewhat. While U.S. trading partner keeps seeking to lower new tariff, the Trump administration has announced to increase federal government revenue, reduce America's trade deficit, and bolstering domestic manufacturing. Cooperation comes from co-working. During the 90 days pause, Korea has to find a diverse way of co-working to restore the communication channel of alliance to reduce the tension, not only of tariff war, but also of trade deficit, domestic manufacturing in the United States. With the advent of WTO, global standard of regulation and multilateralism in the dispute settlement processes have placed as a general rule in international trade. WTO has emerged as the center of trade diplomacy. Ever since the former Trump administration, they've tried to change global standard into American standard and multilateralism into bilateralism. They want to change the center of trade diplomacy from WTO to White House. Against WTO regime of equal treatment among member countries, Trump administration tried to treat each country differently depending on their weight and then their importance on the national interest. It might be an opportunity of offering unique proposal for adjusting mutual interest as allies. Korea and Japan have been prioritized in negotiation. 90 days, Korea restore the discussion channel more than anything else, and then it could be considered as an agenda with the United States, not only trade and tariff, but also shipbuilding, LNG investment in Alaska gas pipe, and defense cost sharing are expected to be discussed comprehensively.
Professor Oh, before I let you go, now Trump's trying to bundle trade and defense deals in one package deal. And we all know Trump can be very pushy, especially when pursuing his goals. Now, how can South Korea make sure that trade-related issues and defense payments don't get put in this one shopping bag?
President Trump said one-stop shopping is a beautiful and efficient process. This means that they will discuss it as a package by adding a different agenda, as Dami mentioned. That is so simple and easy to understand because the Trump administration could maximize the negotiation capability. I don't want to introduce the terminology group costing versus job order costing, but it might be understood President Trump thinks himself as a CEO of the mode of the world. And if you want to place your goods and service in the great and luxurious mode of the world, you have to pay slotting fee, listing fee, commission, and other expenses, whatever they are. Let's make a package deal, especially for you, 25% as entry fee, and 90 days delay would be allowed. Then what about the shop renter? From the perspectives of Korea, when you receive a bill to pay, you should check the list or item one by one, whether each cost is yours and whether it is correct or not. This is why Korea prefers separate job costing. This is why America prefer package deal or group costing. The Trump administration is aiming for a tailor-made trade negotiation. All individuals and negotiations should be tailored to each other based on country's market, export, and U.S. import. Why? It might be harder to exercise leadership under the WTO regime of equal treatment. Power of leadership comes from power of treating differently. In a sense, it is successful in that countries around the world have begun a full-fledged diplomatic war with the United States over a card that will satisfy President Trump, which means, as a hidden meaning is, no more WTO.
All right, Professor Oh, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. As always, it's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.